There we go. Cool. So the recording is started. I did find a way to get audio from this, so it should be a little bit easier for me to record these and put them together for you guys. It's still going to be a little bit difficult for me to get eyes on you, so I'll have to like manually start recording the screen like when you guys are sharing. But I think it's still worth it from the last recording. I think you guys really enjoyed being able to actually see what people were saying and see some of your faces. I think that's the way that we got to do it. Great. It was tons of fun. Not too easy. Got you out of your can't draw after my vacation funk. That's awesome, Ray. I'm glad that finally feels like you're flowing again. Not gonna be very good on paper. And that's kind of how it is, right? I mean, like, I'm also feeling like when I'm trying new stuff, and especially right now, I'm also pushing myself to use paper more. I'm trying out new mediums. And the first things that I'm making, like, it's really not about looking perfect, right? It's about, like, experimenting with the new ideas and concepts that I'm trying out, or even just experimenting with those materials, like seeing what they can do, seeing how this feels. And then fun surprises will happen along the way. Feeling decent about it. It was tough. Trying not to compare myself to everyone else. That is the eternal struggle, isn't it? And I totally get that. I've seen some really, really good stuff coming in through the channels, and I think everyone is really pushing themselves and creating stuff that, like, honestly, I think you guys have blown it out of the park. Like, I wasn't expecting so much creativity, but of course, like, I ended up with such a great group of people here, such an amazing group of creatives who are thinking about things in like their own ways, right? Bringing what you guys have to the table. And that's the best that I could have hoped for. All right. So I wanted to make sure that I let you guys know, I mean, yesterday I needed to reschedule and kind of compress days 4 and 5, but I think they go really, really hand in hand. And the goal for the weekend was to not overload you guys, not give too much homework. So I think it works out to have a break. I am still a little bit under the weather, sadly. So if my voice is a little bit cracky, or if, I'm a little bit lower energy than I will be the other days, that's kind of why. But I think this stuff that we're talking about today is going to be really, really important. And for me, I mean, you can see right there on the screen, I hope, we're talking about basically overcoming perfectionism and also getting outside your comfort zone, which really do go hand in hand. And you'll see like how much they really do. So I think it'll be fun. I wanted to pitch you guys the question to start us off today, as what part of your art is the least fun for you to do? And I'll share a lot about like what mine is as well. And I think this kind of like evolves also as you're working on art and as you're creating new things, or like you change your style a little bit. There will be like something that you kind of dread doing. Or, I mean, if you don't feel like you have any part of that you dread at all, then if you're still getting art block or still getting stuck, what is that step that you're getting stuck on? Like, what is the place where you usually kind of stop and you'll go away and you'll be like, I really just don't want to work on that piece anymore. Like, what's the thing that's stopping you from creating, basically, or that you dread? The most dreaded part for me is the coloring part. I have a hard time with color theory and want the shading and highlights and even base shading to involve multiple colors, which is gorgeous. I mean, I love when people can do that. And not just a single color with different brightnesses. Yeah. And I think that's such a cool tip too. Like when we really talk about, whenever I'm talking about like color theory and bringing like, I guess more intrigue to the painting process, I think people are really surprised to find out that, you really should be exploring different colors in all your shadows and your lightnesses. And that, things like skin, like analyzing the different colors that are in just the face, like it's just there's so many different things that you can bring in different colors. And when you're what I like to do sometimes is just like increase the saturation on photos sometimes and just really take note of like, wow, like that one went full red, this one went full green, and it's the same. It's just the skin tone, right? And it can really like bring to light that there's so many different colors that we're seeing like on a daily basis based on like the light reflection, based on like translucency of the thing itself. Lights have different colors, shadows have different colors. Like thinking about that stuff and just bounce lighting from other things around it is just like, coloring can be so much fun. And I'm interested now in hearing like more about why that's the most dreaded part for you, because there's a lot to think about, of course, but that makes me think you might actually be putting some perfectionism in there. And I think it's really fun for coloring, especially, to realize there's no perfect way to do it, really. Like there's so many different directions you could go, and it will still like you could make it look good in like several different ways, right? So it's more about like your choice. And I'm wondering if you feel like you need to make it perfect, or if you're not using enough colors, or like what stories you've told yourself that make that feel kind of daunting instead of just fun like it really should be. Coloring again. Nice. Okay, so we've got some similarities here. And I don't know if you guys have noticed much, those of you who do follow my Instagram, I used to use a lot of colors, and I've kind of taken a little break from that for the most part. I'll very rarely bring a piece all the way to color lately, because I'm kind of trying to focus on, lines right now. But because of that, when I went to color this piece, it was also kind of, I was like, oh, I haven't really done this in a while. So it's hard to get back into it and start thinking about that. Line art. Yeah. So I'll share also, I think for me, it was also inking and line art for a really long time. That's why I'm like really focused on it right now. But I started noticing, like, I love sketching. I love sending out my messy sketches. But when it comes to sitting down and making that ink, I think it's just all of a sudden you need to be kind of like on your toes. You're thinking about things in a much more like advanced way, and making decisions every single stroke, right? You need to make a decision on like where that stroke is actually going to go. Is it going to go, next to this sketch line or next to this sketch line or somewhere in between? So I think the decision making can be really taxing. And that's probably what this all boils down to. Like a lot of the things you guys are challenged by, it's going to be things that you're making like a higher level of decisions when you're doing. But I'm eager to see. So coloring and rendering again. Next favorite is my indecisiveness, which is kind of, it's funny that I was just saying that. It's about making decisions, right? Like when you can't make a decision, it's usually because you are like overtaxed or overstressed. And decision making, like, I don't know how many of you are actually like interested in this stuff as much as I am, but like I like reading about how taxing decision making really is on a person. It can take a lot out of you, and we don't even realize that. So if you're putting a lot of decisions on your plate, you need to take a lot of rest time afterwards, where you're not making decisions. And it feels like, why am I so tired after, just inking a piece? That's definitely why. And like, that's why I need several sit downs to finish an entire piece usually, because it's just really taxing. There's a lot of decisions being made. Just starting a piece, Sid, that's really interesting. So you've got like the blank page kind of like phenomena of like, just what do I draw? Or is it, I have an image in my mind, I don't know where to begin. Very curious about that. Character consistency. This is interesting. So I'm interested in hearing like what does that mean to you? Like, why does that feel like, if this is the answer to the question here of like, what is the least fun to do? Do you feel like you need to keep characters consistent, and so like that's a stressful part for you? Or is it just that like you actually spend like an enormous amount of time trying to keep that the same? Or like, if you could elaborate on that, I'd be really interested to hear about this. And it looks like a lot of people agree with you. So I'd love to know from anyone that feels this way, like what dig into it a little bit. Like, what is it about that like feels stressful or daunting to you? Backgrounds and tricky poses. Backgrounds are hard for me. I can totally relate to that. And also tricky poses. But I think backgrounds are always, I'll draw the character and then I'll be like, do I have to make a background? Because I don't know where to begin with that. At least that's how I felt for a really, really long time. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And, maybe that is something that isn't as important. Like, even for my comic, I've been starting to realize when I feel like the background is really important to show, it's usually more fun for me to do. And whenever it's feeling like, ugh, I don't even like want to make this background right now, it's usually because it's not that important to the story. So I'm trying to like actually minimize the time that I'm spending doing that stuff. And that's another thing that I want you guys to think about as a lot of you have put something forward now for this answer. And I want you to think about, do I actually need to do that? Like, is that something that I'm pushing on myself that is like a waste of my time, or like a wasted stress thing that I'm like being a perfectionist about? Like, it has to include this. Does it have to include a background? Does it have to have, the hands perfect? Does it have to have full inked lines? Like, for a while when I was really dreading inking my characters, I actually just kind of switched to painting for a while. And a lot of people will say that is kind of like a lazy mode version. If you are having trouble inking, it's usually because you're missing some information there, right? Like, you're not fully aware of what that form is. But painting can also help to make that more clear to you. Experimenting with the shapes and like you get to experiment with how to create 3D without needing to know the exact proportions and everything perfectly. And then when you go back to sketching and inking, it does feel like you've explored a different avenue of it that can make it click and make more sense. So sometimes it really is like the resistance is telling you that, maybe this isn't something to waste your time on yet, or maybe you're not quite there yet. But that's something that we'll go through a lot more in this, because there's a choice to be made there, right? Do I stop doing this thing that I hate doing? Or is that something that if I was good at, I would love doing it and I would be so excited and I'd be happy? Like, if you really want to be really good at hands, but you just dread doing them, but you love and are like very gravitated towards art where the hands are like really, really complex and really good, then, you do want to do that. You do want to like focus on that. And that's important to you. It's just hard. But for me, with backgrounds, at some point I was like, why am I even doing this? Why am I trying to fill my portfolio with backgrounds when like, I don't even really like doing it that much. I'm mostly focused on characters, and it's okay if I'm not like super great at backgrounds. I don't mind that. So there's a choice to be made there sometimes. And I think I like bringing this up because I think there's just a lot that we just kind of don't talk about, where we feel like we want to do everything or we need to be good at everything. And you just don't. You could totally choose to just do the things that you are loving doing, right? And we're going to talk a lot more about the comfort zone and how to make sure that you are still pushing your comfort zone. But just note, if this is vibing with you, or if this makes sense, take it from me that you really don't have to get good at doing things that you don't want to do. It's very, very rare that you're really going to need a skill that you're just like, I have no interest in learning this, and I'm not great at it. Like, sometimes you can truly just cross that off the list. So ask yourself if that would be right for you. Okay. All right. We've spent about 10 minutes on this, so I do want to move forward, I guess. Sorry if I'm rambling. Let me know. But yeah, I want to first go into perfectionism, right? Perfectionism was a big one for me, and I talked about this a lot in day 1 and 2. I would always call myself a perfectionist, and that was huge for me. I was like, I don't want to post this. It's not good enough. I had commissions where people would pay me, full commissions that I worked on for like a year or more, and then finally just refunded their money because I was like, I don't know how to make it perfect. And I just had so much fear about like putting forth something that was imperfect, or that like, wasn't to my own standards. At least that's what I would tell myself. That I would just refund their money, because I was like, I would rather you not see this in its imperfect state than, I don't know, getting the money, which is just so funny. And I like thinking about that, like thinking about that back to that now. And I'm glad that I don't feel this way anymore. And I don't think I could really relate to, feeling like that anymore. But I remember just really just not even wanting this one person to see the like imperfect version of this, that I just felt like I wasn't quite skilled enough to make perfect to my standards. And I don't really, I don't want to go into this too much, but there's a lot of content online. A lot of you are probably already familiar with this process of how your eye will always be a little bit higher than your hand, right? You're always going to be able to see the flaws in your own work a little bit more because you're inspired by these artists that are like, hopefully a little bit, more advanced in the skills that you want to be advanced at. So your eye is always going to be a higher level than your hand. You're not going to be able to create at the level that is satisfactory to your eyes. But we're always bringing that bar up, right? Both of those are leveling all the time. And, there's kind of like this graph that it usually goes in like waves where, it'll catch up for a little bit and you'll make a piece. You'll just be like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever made. And then that just means that your eye needs to learn more. You need to soak up more inspiration. A lot of you are probably familiar with this topic. I'm really glad that in the past 5 years, I've been seeing a lot more content about this concept because it's really important to understand that. And let me know if you have any questions about that or if that didn't make sense to you. Love this, Corp. Thank you so much. That's perfect. I'm glad I don't have to make these graphs in my hand. It is just really important to understand that so that when you are looking back at something that you create and you're like, look, a month ago I made something and I thought it was great. And now it feels like I can't make anything good anymore. That's why you're just in one of these points where, you're at the big loop, right there where Corp is showing, where they're just really far apart. And that just means that you're about to start coming together. You're about to start like absolutely loving, the stuff that you're creating. And and then of course you're going to raise it up again. I can't see actually. What is this? Definitely. I feel like this is a different graph and I can't read it yet, but I'm like very excited that you guys are as interested in this stuff as I am. But basically what I want to impose on you is, as you're going through your art and you're kind of like getting in these stuck zones, knowing that this is completely normal and that it doesn't mean that you're losing skill. Like, I think that's what I felt worried about sometimes, like when I'll sit down to sketch and like nothing good comes out. I'm like, wow, I'm a worse artist today than I was like 5 years ago because like I remember sitting down and just being able to draw so many good things. And it's just not true. It's just that you're in that zone right now. So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully you can kind of also see these visuals. I didn't want to get too into this because I can talk for hours and hours about this concept and I would love to do that. But I want to make sure that we're talking about you guys specifically and what you guys are going through, especially when it comes to perfectionism, so that we can make sure to address some of the very specifics about this. So I know that a lot of you said you were perfectionists. A lot of you also said that you were procrastinators, that you have, anxiety, that you like get stuck. And a lot of the time that comes from what I used to think of as the umbrella term of perfectionism, which all is stemming from fear of judgment. And much as I would like to convince myself that I actually am a perfectionist just for myself, like I just want, my vision, the way that I'm seeing it so clearly, I just want it to be like exactly like I have it in my head. And if it doesn't match that bar, if it doesn't hit that bar, it's not good enough for me. And I would frame it like that, but really, it always really is truly at the core, even secretly sometimes to yourself, about thinking that other people are going to see the flaws in it as well, which if you think about it doesn't make any sense because they don't know what you were originally intending, right? And so if you're worried about it not matching like your original vision, then of course they don't know what you were intending. They're going to see it. They're going to be like, well, there was nothing and then you created that. So it's a net gain for everyone else. And I think another thing that we get worried about is that people are going to say that we're wrong, right? Like your anatomy's objectively wrong in this. So people can like criticize you and say that it's objectively wrong, or maybe like the lighting is something that could never actually exist in real life. That like those kind of criticisms are also not necessarily right? Like there's actually no law about art that the lighting needs to look perfect. It's always going to be up to you, right? And the more realistic you want to make something, the more you can, right? You can learn about like realistic lighting as much as you can, but if the lighting is not necessarily perfect, as we are actually literally seeing in all the AI art that's like being flooding through Instagram, you can literally see that to a trained artist's eye, like we can tell that that doesn't make any sense. But all of these people who maybe don't have too much experience with art are seeing it and they're like, this is amazing artwork. And so it really doesn't matter to most people, like the flaws that you make in your anatomy, the flaws that you make in, you know, creating something that is completely real. Most people will not even really see that. They'll just see something that you created out of nothing and be kind of blown away. But I know we always want to impress each other, right? We want to impress other artists. And I can totally get that. That's kind of what it's all about. But telling our stories, and a lot of us here, we are here to tell stories. We're here to create either comics or animations, or like we have something inside that we kind of want to express. And it's not going to be just to artists, right? We want, like I at least when I make my comic, I want other people to see that too and also feel inspired by it, not just for artists. So in that sense, like, it doesn't matter if my comic is using anatomy perfectly, or if, you know, if the color theory is on point, right? Everyone else could still benefit from seeing my story. And that's kind of what I want to talk about most in this, is getting your vision, that top level vision that is more important than everything else. It should be more important than the thing being perfect, like, basically. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to take a little moment to like read through what you guys are saying. Told once that my art is good for kids. Pretty sensitive on my art. And I personally, I told you guys how someone said that to me about like how I draw like in kiddie, or like like a kid style, I think, just because someone wasn't really familiar with like kawaii art or something. They were like, this is really childish. And I used to be really butthurt about that. But now when I'm thinking about my comic and I'm like, who do I really want to read my comic? Like, who do I want this story to inspire? It is basically like a younger version of me. Like me when I was 16 would love this comic that I'm making. And I think it's okay to like be like, yeah, that is my target. You know, I would love to inspire like a young version of me, and get me to like see that, you know, basically the moral of my story, which I won't get into. Cool. Knowing my art can be a net positive for people is really encouraging. Yeah. And it always is, right? It's especially to somebody who doesn't create art and do much creative work in themselves. Like, they're blown away by the idea that we can create something from nothing. And it's still worth reaching those people, right? And holding back your art because it's not perfect is keeping it from those people who would be blown away and like experience, you know, what I think is one of the coolest emotions possible, which is awe. Like, I love the feeling of awe, and that's what I want to bring to people. And they will feel that because you created something. Like, they don't see all of the things that, you know, you messed up on. And some people will see it, right? But they don't know that you were intending to not do that. I don't know how to explain it, but it's something to keep in mind, especially when you're looking back at a specific piece and you're like, I see this as being a mess up. But like, and I can look at any one of my pieces and I can point out like a bunch of things that I'm like, that's messed up, that's messed up. But no one else knows that you messed that up, because they'll just assume that you wanted it like that, right? They could just assume that it's a stylistic choice. It's very difficult to critique art because of that, honestly. I can say, you know, what I think I would do, but it doesn't mean that like the person should actually change that about the art. You know, we're all different. There's a lot of like stories that I loved as a kid that, looking back at it, I don't actually want to call out anybody right now, so I'm not going to say, but like they're some of my favorite manga, some of my favorite like childhood books that like made huge impressions on me and that like changed my life. Like, I would not be the person that I am today without them. Now, looking back on them, I can see that I would consider that person that made that to be a very beginner artist. Like, they make very common mistakes. Like, I never noticed that in the least, you know, when I was growing up, and it did not affect my ability to enjoy that work. Like, it was they were like my number one favorite things in the world. So don't hold back because you're seeing mistakes, or because you can tell that like you're a beginner artist. Anybody can make a huge impact and tell your story. I'm glad this is resonating with you guys. It looks like you guys can kind of relate to this also. A dabbler, yeah. I think when people look at art and say it's childish, but like artistic, wait, what does that mean? I'm having trouble reading that, Root Rage. For some reason, people associate beginner art with kids for some reason. And also sometimes it is also stylistic things. It's hard to know. I mean, I'm even thinking one of the artists that I was thinking of, I don't want to call them out and be like, I feel like you're a beginner artist, because like, again, they've accomplished more than I have. They've got an entire, manga series out. But what I mean is like, their art also, I just wanted to say, it doesn't look like what someone would say is childish, or like a childish like style or anything. Like, it doesn't look like it's a manga for children necessarily. I mean, I guess some people might argue all mangas for children. I disagree. Yeah, I think it looks like a very elevated, mature style, but then there's just some very common mistakes that a lot of people would consider to be like, I would say like beginner intermediate, where it just didn't affect anything about like the ability to enjoy that work at all. The main point of that is to just say, no matter where you are in the journey, like your dream project could already be well underway. And like this guy who made this comic that I loved when I was a kid, I look back on him a lot because it's so inspiring to me to be like, I've been putting off making my comic because I didn't feel like I was good enough. And he just like went for it, and he made something that like impacted so many people. And I absolutely like, that's so inspiring to me. Like it always just makes me think like, you're ready now. Like you are ready. You think that you're not, and your eye's always going to be above where your ability is. So you're never going to feel like you're good enough, because it's never going to be there, but you are. And there's people out there right now that are missing out on experiencing whatever you are thinking about in your head and that you're trying to bring to the world. All right, we're going to move on, because I know I'm ranting at this point. My little sick brain is rambling. So yeah, just briefly, what makes art really interesting to us also is the imperfections. I had a lot of people talk to me a lot about my what I'm diving into right now, which is like a lot of ink art, and people will absolutely love it because it looks messy, because it's like, it's a scratchy, right? I've gotten a lot of comments that are just like, wow, like the scratchiness and like the messiness, just like it's a vibe, and that's something that a lot of my work is just very, I always try to make the lines nice and neat and tidy, because my art is not naturally like that, because my sketches are very messy, because my hand is very shaky naturally. I look up to artists who have like a perfect line, or like very clean inks. And that's just my own hang up, right? That's just me being like, I envy them. And so like, I want to like pretend to be like them. But when I do embrace the sketchiness and the scratchiness and the messiness that my hand naturally produces, people are blown away. They're like, whoa, like it looks so interesting. And it's like, I don't know. And there's a level of like, of confidence and fearlessness that I needed to find in order to like even put that out there. But that confidence and fearlessness shows in the piece, because people are like, how did you do that? Like, how do you just go with those scratchy lines and make it work? Like it takes a level of bravery. And yeah, especially right now, imperfection has authenticity to it. Yeah, Corp. and especially with the AI coming out, right? Like those little things that your hand is creating are special, are unique, and people like those are the things that people fall in love with about your work is not how perfect it is. Very, 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 very rarely will anyone ever comment about how perfect something is. Like they'll notice the things that make it different from what they see on the daily, right? That's what beauty really is. I don't know if I actually have a slide that goes into that, but it's one of my favorite concepts is that what beauty truly is something different than what we see day to day. And what we think perfection is basically what we see day to day, right? Like something being perfect would be that it fits perfectly into a box, right? And what beauty really is everything outside that box, like everything that people are not seeing. And that is why AI art, in my opinion, is kind of stuck. Like it's just not going to go anywhere for a very long time, I think. I'm grateful for any tools that come out that are, legitimate. But I don't think that we're going to be, bombarded with AI art too much longer, because the truth is, like, we just don't really find it beautiful. And the more that floods like our internet space, the less we're going to find it beautiful, because our eyes can see it. Our eyes can see that it looks just like it just fits right into the box of like what already is out there. And there's just nothing else that it's doing. Might enter uncanny valley. I'm not sure. You want to push outside that box. And if you were making something that even to your own eye looks totally perfect, the chances are that it looks perfect because you're just fitting into the box, which is fine, especially as you're growing. But the things that make you stand out, the things that are going to make you stand out are going to be the ways that you push the envelope, or the ways that your hand just naturally does something. And you're going to see those as flaws, like I did. I always see my sketchy lines and the way that my hand shakes as like a huge flaw in my ability to create art, because I'm looking up to these people who are basically the opposite of me. Even really weird things, like I always naturally made very rounded shapes in my characters. And whenever I see artists who have like super, super rigid, like sharpness, I'm like, that is so, so beautiful and badass. And so I try to bring that into my work. But whenever I make something that's like very rounded and flowy, people are like, that's you, that's your style. Like you do that really well. And it's like, to me, that's a flaw of my work, but it stands out to people. So I hope I've gone through a lot of different reasons that perfectionism is so backwards to creating good art. Because just the mere idea that we want to make something perfect is not going to make beautiful art. It's not going to make interesting art. It's not going to have people falling in love with art. If you made the most perfect thing in the world, no one would probably care. like honestly, no, like I feel like that's just not what art is. And I feel like it wouldn't stand out as much. It would fit into that perfect little box and you'd be really proud of it. In fact, like some of the pieces that we are really proud of, they just don't do as well on social media as our sketchy, weird, random sketches. And that's a phenomenon that like a lot of us have experienced. And this is basically why, like, what looks like flaws to us is what's going to look so interesting, bold, brave, like cool, unique to everyone else. So I hope that little rant vibes with you guys. Let me see what I wrote here. A novelty, something we haven't seen before, and difference, something that makes us unique from others. Yeah. Okay. Now we are kind of like pushing it here, but I really do want to like take about 5 minutes, and a lot of you have your sketchbooks in front of you. If you don't, I totally understand that if you're like in a weird place and you can't really get to a sketchbook or like a drawing utensil, it's okay. But like ideally, you have your sketchbook in front of you, taking notes, whatever. I want you to take a whole page, if you can spare up a whole page, and just create an ugly sketch. Like create something that is messy or imperfect or like whatever that would mean to you, that like it's the opposite of perfect. And yeah, I don't mean like draw an ugly person, all right? So don't like reveal what you think is ugly in people in this, but just make something messy. I mean, maybe there's not even any subject to it, like whatever you think would seem like the opposite of perfection to you. I want you to really take the next 5 minutes and do that. So I'm going to start here. It's perfect because it's 3:35. So in 5 minutes, I want to reflect on this. So yeah, make a mess. Go for it. I don't know. Can I like turn the music on for you guys? I don't know if I can do that. I'll just sit here. I'll check it and see if you guys have any questions about it. But you do not have to show this. I don't even want you guys to think about showing it or posting it in here. This is just for you. So make it as ugly as you can. Just go for it. And I'm going to do it too. All right, I'm seeing you guys say done, even though the assignment is to spend 5 minutes on it. But I also feel like I've created the most ugly thing that I can make. I wanted to read out what Moore says. I don't consider myself a perfectionist, but I do criticize my work a lot, especially since a lot of the times what I feel fails about my art is more technical stuff. Weird anatomy, inconsistencies, bad values, muddy colors, stiff poses. And we kind of talked a little bit about that, right? Like that's all sometimes stuff that people won't completely overlook. Like again, this comic that made such a huge impression on me as a kid was, I look back now and I'm like, the anatomy was so it makes me uncomfortable to read it now because it's just like all I see are these mistakes. But as a kid, that did not like affect me at all. And the only reason I'm noticing it now is because I chose to go into art. And so like I'm noticing these like inconsistencies basically. So it doesn't have to stop you from putting what you want out into the world, and you'll get better over time, right? Like it's slowly those things become like natural, and like there are things that I used to make mistakes of all the time that I would never make that mistake anymore. Even if I stopped drawing for like a couple years, coming back to it, my eye is just like permanently, at a better level, and my hand is also like higher. So I think those things come with time and shouldn't stop you from, creating and putting it out into the world so that people who, truly would benefit from it can still see it. Don't want my art to be perfect because perfect is subjective and my art already looks very cartoony and stylized. But if it looks bad to me, I'd rather acknowledge it. And you could totally acknowledge it, right? That's actually a good thing. In fact, I mean, the YouTube video that I made that really blew up was acknowledging one of my failures and the mistakes that I was seeing in my own like life about like how I wasn't really making the income that I wanted or that I thought I would make, and what I was doing wrong. Like, people love when you acknowledge your mistakes. And you don't have to like pretend that you think it's perfect to still want to share it and to still see the value of putting it out there. But yeah, people love that. People love when you can also show them, your mistakes a little bit and be like, and then they can learn from that too and be like, oh, like I also do that. I didn't realize it was a mistake because their eye is not quite as high as yours, but that could also teach them a little bit. Sometimes you have a deadline and a ton of drawings to do. You see your mistakes, but you're too tired. Yeah. When I'm done with a piece, like, I mean, I kept on saying I was going to go back into even the piece for this challenge that I drew. And there's some things I wanted to change. But now that it's been a few days and it's like, we've been working with this and seeing it in the presentations, I'm like, I'm just not going to change it. I don't think. I don't know. I'm still trying to decide. But it's harder for me to think about going back and like doing this now that it's polished up and out there. Sometimes it's better to just move on to a new one, instead of going back and fixing like minor mistakes that are not hindering anyone's enjoyment of the piece. Cool. Some random doodles. So what I want to ask about like what you guys just went through, now that we are past the time, I want you guys to just think about like how it felt to make that. And like, did it surprise you? Did anything like come out of that surprised you? Because I can already share, like, I just went through, and originally I think a lot of us were just like trying to make some scribbles or whatever. I found myself, even though I was trying to make this ugly, like accidentally finding things that I liked about it, or being like I would literally be like, oh no, that looks too beautiful. Like this weird scribble actually makes it all look kind of cool. So I would have to do away with that. Like, I just accidentally would create stuff that looks really cool. And yeah, I'm curious also, you guys, with your shares, people are like, that looks great. I think that's kind of another thing to really realize here is just like, it's actually kind of hard to make something that isn't beautiful in at least one way, or will be beautiful to someone else. Like, I really just, even my random, like, absolutely like messy looking scritches that I made, I'm like, no, well, that kind of looks good next to this other thing. It looks like a cool, like, weird modern art piece or something. And I just found it really hard to mess that up, hard to like make something that, or not accidentally fall into making something that looks kind of badass in a way. But again, that might be because I'm so used to like finding reasons to like my own art, which is a big part of this, is just like pushing yourself to see it for the beauty that it really is. I'm loving these, you guys. I did not know I could draw this without reference. That's wild. Yeah, like, actually. And things will just come out of us, right? And I think it's important to do weird things like this every once in a while and just remind yourself that, you're a creative for a reason. You're an artist for a reason. Like, the stuff that's going to come out of you naturally is going to be pretty cool. Like, and it's just taking a break, and actually taking a break from using reference sometimes can free that up and make you realize that you really do have something in you that, can be really fun to just pull out and just see how that looks. And obviously I'm a very big proponent of using reference. When you're not using reference, you're not learning, but there's also a lot in your head already that it's good to just get in touch with and be like, well, what is in there? Like, what does it feel like to just create without having any expectation, without having anything that like you're necessarily trying to create, or like anyone you're trying to impress with it. If you don't have to post it, if it's like truly just for the experience of creating it, what does that feel like and what comes out of it? Because that's actually how I started making more sketchy ink art that people now really love. Like I was like, I'm never going to show anyone this. I was just trying to, I had gotten, these new pens and I wanted to like explore them, see what they could do. And then the stuff that I kept making, I was like, I think I should share this. It actually looks kind of awesome. So yeah, I think a lot can come from just taking a step back and just making something without any purpose, basically. And it can really get you in touch with the fact that it's all going to have value, even if you feel like it's not perfect, messy, the anatomy's wrong, you didn't use enough reference, blah, 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 or like, maybe it's not even colored, or it can still have a lot of value to people. Like we're just loving these, you guys. I knew this group would be bold enough to share some of them, but I'm pretty impressed by how many people are sharing. I definitely wanted you guys to start with the intention of just making something that doesn't need to be shared, so that you don't have to worry about impressing anybody with it. But yeah, hopefully you can see how cool these are, and especially how cool they are to us. Because that's what the reality is. Like the more novel, interesting, unique stuff is going to be created when you're not trying. It's going to be created like accidentally. And it's really important, like, I guess just making happy accidents, right? Like that's what this is all about. And people are going to see those and be like, that's interesting. Like I haven't seen that before. And the fact that they haven't seen it before is probably why you would see that as a mistake. You're like, no one else is doing that. Like clearly it's wrong. Or that it doesn't exist in nature. That's not what something looks like. So it's clearly wrong. But someone might be like, whoa, that's how you see the world, like, impressionists and a lot of really famous artists, like the thing that blew people away was that it doesn't look like that. Like that doesn't look like what we're seeing in reality. That's not what flowers look like, but it's how it looks to them, or like it's how it feels, or it's just flat out like the way that they could paint with their shaky hands. Sometimes that's the limitations are what make it so interesting to us. I hope that exercise went well. Let me know if you enjoyed that, or like what you got out of that. But I want now to ask the question, like, how do you think you can bring some of what was cool about that exercise and some of what was cool about like just creating without any intention? Like, how can you bring that to when you're sitting down to make a piece that you actually do have a vision for, or that you have a purpose, like it's going to be used for something? How can you bring some of that, the way that feels, to that? And that's something, I want to let you guys think about. You can totally type it into the chat if you have something, but keep that in mind and think about that as we go through the rest of this presentation. And I'm sorry, it's going to be a little bit longer today, but will be not so much homework because I want you guys to make sure you're focused on what we already got going. But yeah, so I'm going to move into a little bit of what the comfort zone is. And a lot of you probably already are familiar with this term. I'm not saying that you're not, but I want you to really like go through it and talk about what it is to me. And basically it's activities and behaviors that fit into a routine and a pattern. And this minimizes your stress and risk. It feels safe, right? It feels like nothing is being risked. There's no danger in doing this. It's usually stuff that we draw all the time, or we do all the time. And we like to stay there. We would, like, if I was to sit down and try to draw something right now and I did want it to come out good, I would probably draw only the things that are in my comfort zone. I would probably draw the exact way that is in my comfort zone. So that's how you can think of this and try to figure out like what is in your comfort zone. Like if I was like, draw something really fast right now and it has to be good. I don't actually want you guys to do this. But if I said that, like, what would your instinct be to draw? Because you know for a fact that you can draw it well. And for me, and probably for a few of us, it would definitely not be hands. It would definitely not have any hands visible. And that's why a lot of times when I'm sketching, we'll get so good at like hiding hands, right? Because a lot of us have trouble with that. And for those of you that don't, like, I envy you, and you're amazing. But for me, like, that's definitely something that I would think, that's outside the comfort zone. What's in my comfort zone? Maybe I would literally just draw eyes. I feel pretty comfortable with that. I know that could be good. I might draw like the hairstyle and cut that I generally draw, like bangs, short hair. Like, I would draw the thing that I feel the most comfortable drawing. It's where you feel safe and secure. It's also where growth is limited, right? Like, this is why same face syndrome has a bad rap. I'm someone who has same face syndrome, but I don't really care that much. And we'll talk about that also. But the reason that it has a bad rap is that you're probably staying in your comfort zone. You're probably just drawing the thing that you know how to draw, or like you're drawing the one character that you're really good at drawing. Within this zone, you operate with a sense of familiarity, predictability, and control, which can lead to complacency over time. There was a time when I just kind of like got bored with drawing, and I felt it coincided with the time, like it was right after this time when I was like finally feeling good about my art. I was like, wow, I actually finally am here. I feel like I can create the visions that are in my head. I feel like I can make characters well. Like, finally, I'm there. I've always wanted, to be able to do this. And now I finally feel like I can sit down and I can draw characters well. And then right after that, I had this sense of like, I don't want to draw anymore. Like, I'm bored. Like, I don't like, I finally achieved that level of mastery, not even total mastery, right? But just like the level that I had always wanted, because my eye, right, could see that. And my hand finally caught up, and I was like, awesome, like, I'm there. But then I stayed there for a while. I didn't push myself, and I was like, I'm freaking bored. Like, I'm bored all the time. Like, I don't want to draw another one of these girls, because I wasn't pushing outside my comfort zone. And I'll walk more into that later and what the actual like fix for that was for me. But the point is that staying in your comfort zone can eventually like almost dry out your creativity. Like, it'll just feel like you're uninspired a bit. And that's why we always want to keep raising our eye, which pushes us to challenge ourselves a bit more. But I want to impose, why do we stay in our comfort zone? It's because we like it, because not even just we like it, we need it. We do need a good place where we can rest. Like, part of creating this scribble challenge was about feeling like there was no pressure. You didn't need to, there's no one to impress. There's nothing that you needed to accomplish with it other than like making a mess. And you could just like have fun and create or do whatever you wanted, right? There's no pressure. And it's important to feel that, especially with creativity. It's important to have a comfort zone, a place where you can just create and not worry and not challenge yourself too much. Like, you can just like have fun, Because when you're comfortable, when you're doing something that you've done a million times, you can then push yourself in little ways. You could be like, well, now, like, what do I want to say with this? There's a bunch of different creative ways that you can play with it, and it truly just feels like play instead of work. It doesn't feel like stressful or anything. You can actually like relieve stress by drawing things that are in your comfort zone. You might actually feel energized afterwards because it is actually a place of rest. It is really important to spend time in your comfort zone. So don't take this to mean like, these are bad things that are in your comfort zone. They are good. They are things that you do clearly love and are good at, and you should keep on drawing that. So don't think of the comfort zone as a bad thing. You want a good balance of staying in the comfort zone and understanding that is recuperation. It is rest. It is a place for you to play. And then every once in a while, you do want to push yourself a little bit more, which is what we're going to talk about next, your growth zone. So you want a good balance. And I would say, and maybe I'm wrong on this, it depends on what your goals are. But for me, at least, I wanted more. My percentage of time in the comfort zone needs to be a little bit higher, especially whenever you are growing in your life. Like right now, I'm starting on a bunch of new endeavors, right? I'm doing this workshop I've never done before. I'm pushing myself in other ways in my life. And I definitely don't want to learn how to do, 3D modeling right now. I don't want to learn how to do a new art skill because I'm already getting a lot of stress and external pressures in my life. So a higher percentage of my art is staying in my comfort zone right now. And that's okay. That's okay for me. So you want to like flex that with what you're doing in your life, the space that you have, and know that if you're ignoring your artwork, if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself and you're still not like, you're not drawing for a while, and you're questioning like, why do I not feel like drawing every day like I used to? Like, I just really don't want to draw, or I have art block. It might be because you're trying to push yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit too much for what you currently like have the capacity for. So I would actually encourage you, especially when you're just diving back into art, to figure out what your comfort zone is with art, and just let yourself play with that. Like, let yourself just create the things that like are easy for you and can be regenerative for you, can like give you energy again. And then as you get the ball rolling, you can challenge yourself more and more, right? I'm not here to say like get outside your comfort zone entirely, like learn how to do backgrounds even if you don't want to, like I think it is very important to recognize though what we do feel is safe, what we do feel like is in our comfort zone to create, and what might be a challenge. So if you can be very clear on that for yourself, then you can decide when is the right time to challenge yourself and when it's not. So like I'll do fun little drawing challenges with my friends, right? And sometimes like I think we're actually doing one right now where we'll have like a color palette that we need to all stay in, and I think that it's fun to challenge ourselves and like see what we can do there. What can we do with that same color palette, and like how do we push ourselves to like use these colors we wouldn't normally use. But I think at the beginning I was like I just want to make a note that like I'm not really trying to push myself to use more colors right now. I'm in a black and white phase. I'm just trying to like improve on lines right now. Like that's my focus. So I might do something else. I'm not sure. And sometimes you have to have that boundary and be like, I don't have the capacity to push myself in this particular area right now. Let's focus and get good on the things that I feel comfortable doing and that would just be a little bit of a challenge. So like taking on a whole new medium, for example, in a way that feels like pressure, feels like there's an expectation on you to perform, can be a huge daunting task. And of course you will grow from it a lot, but you want to make sure that you are opting for that when you have the capacity for it. So note what things you're comfortable with. Make note of that in your sketchbook if you can. Share with us if you feel like you can, if you feel safe doing that. But that way, when you're going into a drawing, you can really see, this drawing that I have an idea of, it's going to challenge me in these areas because like maybe I have to do hands. I'm gonna need to like do that one hand. So that's gonna be the challenge area. And because I have to do that, and then maybe like I'm doing some kind of a mech outfit or some kind of mechanical stuff that maybe is new for me. Those things are challenges. So in order to make sure this isn't a high pressure, stressful piece of art for me, I might like opt to do a hairstyle that I'm more familiar with, or, an expression that I'm more familiar with, just because I'm already pushing myself in those ways and I don't want to make it such a stressful piece for myself. Or maybe I wouldn't opt to make it one of my first overly painterly pieces in a while, because it's just going to be a lot more challenging. So it's just good to know what's easy for you, know what's difficult for you, and make sure that you're not like, I guess, having a bad amount of balance. So it's okay to stay in your comfort zone as much as you want, honestly. But as you're going outside your comfort zone, I would say like try to have a balance, try to have something that you're working on with a piece, and try to not overload yourself with too many things at once. Or if you do that, take away the pressure of sharing it. When you're trying something completely new, I always will tell myself, I'm not going to share this one, because then you get this freedom to still play. Then you're back in your comfort zone. Even if you're challenging yourself, it's going to feel like a comfort zone because there's no pressure. Those are some of my tips. I'd love to know what you guys think of that, and let me know if anyone disagrees, or I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say on that. All right, I have been ranting. I haven't even really let you guys chat this one. I knew that we were going to have an easy, nice weekend, so I didn't want to have too much pressure, but I'm glad so many of you were able to show up. Yeah, okay. Let's move on. Yeah. So why ever be uncomfortable? I love the term comfort. I have this kind of weird story of like when I was a kid, my parents like noticed that the way that I would pronounce, like I always almost had, I have a lisp actually. I don't know if you can actually tell anymore, but I had a lisp like a lot of my childhood. It was very, like I had a very weird way of talking. It sounded like I had a baby voice until I was like 18. And people, my parents noticed that the one word that I would say so perfectly was comfortable. And I would pronounce it like that when I was a kid. And it was funny because my dad would always like, be like, why does she do that? And it's, I think, because being comfortable was extremely important to me back then. It was my main priority, and it was the number one everything. Like that was what everything was about, was like increasing comfort. And it took me a while really to realize that it's not necessarily a good place to be, right? Like you want to feel comfortable or be able to feel comfortable when you're relaxing, but too much comfort can be a bad thing, especially for us creatives, because like we already talked about, creativity is all about novelty. And so not just for like adding novelty to your pieces that like other people haven't seen, but it's going to be about you experiencing novelty in your own creation. So you definitely want to sprinkle in things that you've never done before in your work. I would just, sprinkle it in, but definitely always have something that's kind of novel to you. It doesn't have to be like, I suck at drawing this, so I'm going to draw it. But something new, like maybe something you've never drawn before, maybe some medium that you've never drawn before. That's one of the big reasons that I pushed you guys, especially digital artists, to use traditional while we're sketching, because it's going to activate a sense of novelty to you. It's going to be like, it's going to unlock a little part of your brain, and you're going to feel a little bit more creative because of that. That's just the way that it works. And creativity is really fun like that, because our brain will try to solve problems for itself, and there's a lot more problems to solve when you're giving it a tool it's never freaking seen before, or like it hasn't used in a long time. It's going to try to get creative with the way that it's solving those problems. You're going to notice, the line width on your pen, and you're going to try to figure out how to make a smaller line with that pen, or little weird things that your brain's going to try out to solve that you wouldn't have had to try to solve with a different tool that you're more familiar with. And that will lead to creative solutions. And it'll also increase your capacity for creating creative stuff. Hopefully that makes sense. And I think it almost sounds like you now have to make a decision, right? About like how much do you push outside your comfort zone, and how much do you do the stuff that you are really good at and the stuff that you feel comfy with. But this is what moving forward with being an artist is all about. It's literally about doing the things that you feel like are you. And a lot of that we're already kind of delving into. We've probably already started drawing the things that we love. Like I draw girls all the freaking time, right? And that just happened naturally without me needing to analyze it. But now I can see that's my comfort zone. And if I ever have a project where I need to draw, a guy like I do right now with my comic, if I feel resistance to doing that, I can see it's not because I don't know, it's not because I don't want to draw my comic or because it's not important to me. It might be because, oh yeah, like I have to draw the guy in this scene, and that's new to me. So like that's why there's resistance. And I don't need to like make it up that it's perfectionism or anything. It's simply outside my comfort zone. And so like instead of pressuring myself and saying like, well, as I'm doing this, I'm going to be publishing this, I can maybe take a moment and draw that character, draw the male character for a bit, and take away the pressure of posting it, take away the pressure that like this is the comic, and just that way that it's going to still feel like play, and it'll put it back into like this comfort zone bubble feeling while I'm actually improving and challenging myself. All right. It is past 4. I know that we usually try to keep this under an hour, but we're almost there. And I want to talk about a really scary word, basically, failure. I think that this is a dark term to me, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a dark term, but to me, that just even seeing this on the screen, like, puts a sense of dread in my heart, and it might feel the same way for you guys. But I want you guys to question, like, what would happen if you do leave your comfort zone and you fail? Like, what if it gets messed up? Like, what happens? And whenever you are feeling resistance to doing something challenging or leaving your comfort zone in some regard, or trying to draw hands or whatever, trying to draw a weird pose or trying to draw backgrounds, whatever's outside of your comfort zone, or that you are afraid of drawing, or afraid of spending time in, or afraid of going back to a piece because you're on that part of it. I want you to ask yourself, like, what if I do this and I fail? Like, what are, like, literally list out, like, some of the outcomes that you can come up with that would happen if you failed at this. And if you want, you can share some of that in the chat. I think mostly this is just a tip about, like, how to kind of start to combat that. If you can do that, if you can just take a moment and write out some of the outcomes, in most cases, especially with just drawing, because very little is actually at risk when we're being creative, and that's why it can feel like play and why it should feel like play. But you'll see that the outcomes of you failing are very negligible, right? Like, it's not going to have an impact on your life. It's definitely not as bad as you think it is. And seeing that written down and trying to come up with, like, a bad result of failing can sometimes just make you laugh. It'll be like, wow, I was really freaking scared of that, and truly nothing bad can happen. And I know this might sound a little woo, but, like, journaling this out and, like, really writing it out is super helpful. And it's a technique that's used in a lot of different circles, and there's a lot of studies on it. This activates that part of your brain, and it will, like, change the way that you view failure and view perfectionism and view scary, challenging things that are outside your comfort zone. It will eventually, like, change them permanently. It'll change the way that your brain works. So try to activate this whenever you do feel resistance to working on something that's challenging for you, and recognize that it is just because it's outside your comfort zone. It's not that you don't want to finish the piece. It's not that you think it's not going to be perfect. It's that you're working on something that's difficult and you're not sure how it's going to come out. You're not sure what the result is going to be. You're not sure how it's going to be perceived. It might fail in your eyes, and you just need to sort of start thinking about, like, what those outcomes would be if you fail, because failing in itself is not bad, and most of those outcomes are not bad either. So that's what I want you guys to start seeing. Cool. So yeah, for day 4 and 5, we smashed these together today. But I mentioned we're not really going to have homework during this weekend, because I do want you guys to feel like you can catch up a little. I want everyone to be caught up on, like, having created your alter ego character, at least, like, know what that character is going to look like, and be very satisfied with the way that your fears look and how you would conquer them. Make sure that you're clear on those, because, like, tomorrow we're really going to dive into, you know, what is expected for the final project, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I want to make sure that you guys are good with that. But moving forward, and I just want to put this in your minds, like, whenever you do have that thought that stops you from creating, question what exactly is the concern, like, what part of going outside your comfort zone might you be attacking here? Like, ask yourself these questions about, like, why are you worried about it not being perfect? What do you think is imperfect about it? What do you think is going to be difficult for you? And ask yourself, what would happen if you totally fudged that? You know, if it failed, if I didn't get the anatomy perfect, you know, what would that look like? What would happen? Like, what is the outcome, basically? And force yourself to actually write it down. If you're in a position where you cannot write it down, you probably are in a position where you're not about to be drawing anyways. Write it down right in the Procreate while you're drawing the thing. You know, this is the level that like it really takes to get through this stuff. And if you want to be able to always sit down and draw, this is one of the steps. I won't say that you have to do this forever, because again, like it will permanently shift the way that you think about your own art and these challenges over time. But to start, like I definitely think this is a huge tool. So if you are working on a separate piece, or as you start to work on this final project, start thinking about this, like whenever you have any resistance to it, like question it, question what it would look like to fail and what would happen if you failed. All right. Hope that all made sense. I'm going to be here for questions. I know we're a little bit late, but I'll probably stay until like 4:30, and depending on if you guys have any big questions, I want to make sure that you have time to think about this, and also ask any questions as you guys are working on the homework from before. If anyone is super behind, or they feel like, if you're behind, if you're like still working on, the first homework or something, and you have questions on that, that's totally fine too. I will be here to answer anyone's questions. So, Q&A time. Go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question, and if you don't want to come up and talk, still raising the hand is the way to like make sure that I see you and can call on you. So then you can just stay muted after I click on it, or you're welcome to come up and be on camera. And if anyone wants to kind of share and talk through what they have done for their projects, this would be a great time to do that. If you want to come up on video just to talk a little bit about the process of what you've been working on, this would be a great time to do that too. All right, and I'm going to record so that we get everything. Okay. Cool. And K-Man, you are up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
All right, good. Turn on my camera. Sorry for the backlighting. My room is just like that. But yeah, I guess with this challenge, I'm struggling a lot because I feel like I get so stuck in these thoughts that I get like demotivated, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't sure if you had any strategies or ideas. Like I've already written some down. I don't mind sharing them if that
Yeah.
gives you more context.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm afraid of letting my fans down. What if I lock myself into a story I'm not a fan of and I have to stop again? What if I'm not as good as my peers? What if I'm not good enough, period?
Yeah.
Um, and these thoughts, as well as just general self comparison, good old self comparison, um, is it makes everything a little bit tougher, um, in general. Like I did this comic, which if anybody wants to read, you're welcome to read. I think the link's in my profile, but it's um, it's a comic that I started during the pandemic, and I've been trying to get back to it. But I found myself sort of fall out of love with the story at the time, and I was so stressed out. And then I want to rebuild it and reboot it, but I'm afraid that maybe the same outcome will happen again, or maybe it's just not good enough in general for me to try to do my comic company or whatever it is. It's a whole bunch of, it's a myriad of things that is hard for me to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, so one thing that I would push you to do is you have a lot of questions in there, right? Like, what if it doesn't work out? What if I change my mind later? Or like I want to do something else, or what if you? I assume this is about like, what if you rebooted it and then you fall out of love with it again, and you've rebooted it again, and now the whole thing is happening again. What if you're letting down those fans who like that and they wanted to see more? So what is the answer to that? Like, what if that happened? What next? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean like, I want you to totally think about this, but what is the outcome of that failing? Yeah,
Oh, like I guess I guess I would feel uh embarrassed, ashamed.
ashamed.
Um, yeah, I would feel maybe like I wasn't cut out to do this, and that's like this is kind of my dream, so it's kind of there's a fear with that.
It's interesting because like it is your dream, right? This is like really important to you. So, and could that possibly be true that like you're not cut out to do your dream when you have that vision? And like at least I would say that the fact that you want this so badly is proof that that is what you should be doing. That's my own belief, of course. That's definitely that's something that's pushed me and a lot of other people to again put that vision on the pedestal and make that the number one. I want to know, I guess, where the shame is coming from. You said you would feel ashamed, so let's question that. Like, why would you feel ashamed if this the worst possible outcome would happen, right? If you, let's say you reboot it, it gets, I don't know exactly what would be the worst for you, but I'm imagining like it gets even more fans, and then you quit again because you have like no love for it. Like if there's a worse scenario, like let's go with that. But that's kind of like what would you feel shame about with that?
I guess it's either that or like I get I've lost my previous fans from dropping the last one, and I have no fans at all.
Yeah.
Either one of those, I feel like it could go either way. Um, I guess I guess because like I come from a family of artists for one, so I feel like I should be able to like make this happen. And the other thing is I feel like because I don't know about everybody else, but when it comes to like me being a fan of something, it's like I enjoy it and it's almost like I'm trusting the creators in a way.
Yeah.
At least that's how I feel. So then it's like when the creators make like this is just a simple example. I hated the end of Samurai Jack. The
Okay.
way that that went really upset me. And I felt like why did I trust this person? Why did I get invested in this series if it was going to end like this? And it's like I feel like even though I was making the comic for free, it's just like I feel like I made it to give people something to read and during the pandemic, but then it was like I just was so burned out from just life stuff, mental health stuff, and everything else. It just was like I just didn't feel like I could do it anymore. And then when I'm trying to revisit it, I'm like something isn't quite right. So it's like I don't know. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
It makes
I
sense.
just feel like I feel like I deserve, or my fans deserve the best. So I just feel bad when I don't deliver.
Yeah. And I, like you said, right? A lot of this is that you've experienced that from some of your favorite creators. And you're like, I don't want to make my fans feel the way that I felt about me. And that's huge. And I think that's a lot of the time exactly what we find when we dig too deep, or yeah, as deep as we need to really in these fears. It's like, for example, if I'm worried about being judged on my anatomy, it's probably because I look at other artists and I see when they mess up at anatomy, and I'm like I even said that earlier, right? I was like, they're a beginner artist. They were a beginner artist because like I can see their anatomy mistakes, and
Yeah.
it's because of what we're judging about other creators that we're worried that they're going to judge us the exact same way. And so a big part of I guess I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to feel about other creators, but a big part of learning to love your own creations and giving yourself the freedom to play and to create the way that's best for you personally is to kind of accept that other creators are just going to do what they can. They're just expressing themselves. And so practicing accepting that in other people, or accepting, what is what may be, what will be, or like whatever that phrase is.
Oh
Almost
yeah.
let them create the way that works for them, and feeling like a lot less that creators owe you anything at all. I feel like that's a much more freeing place to be, because it means that you don't feel a lot of that pressure that you are only putting on yourself, right? I don't know if you've had any proof that your fans actually are very expecting anything specific from you, or if they just love the way that you're creating and would love almost anything that you do. But my inkling is that you're putting this pressure on yourself, and a big part of why is because you're judging everyone else the same way, right? You're judging, and not saying that you don't need to judge Samurai Jack, but still having a sense of acceptance that, well, that is the way it ended, that just is. And you enjoyed it, you enjoyed it when you did, and it still was a fun ride, I hope.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I guess it does partially come from just my views on art in general, and feeling like, I guess maybe it's also the way I view life too. Like, I try to make people. I'm a little bit of a people pleaser. I try to make people happy, and I don't like to get trapped in that. But I think I do it with my art, and then I obsess when I don't feel like I can
Yeah.
provide that.
Yeah, but I
And
mean that's kind of not art is about you expressing, and you have a vision inside of you, right? I mean, even your will to like reboot the series, or like your comic, makes me think that you've got a bigger vision for it already in your head. And not only do you owe your fans to like create what is in your head, or like whatever you're feeling spurred to create, but it's mostly about you and expressing that fully, and the way that you feel that it should be expressed. You have to put yourself first, be selfish, put for that vision. And I think that you can already see that you would be creating more if you didn't put the pressure of like pleasing them on you. So what your pressure is obviously making it difficult for you to please them.
yeah, you're right. And I see Corb in the comments too with the you can't please everyone, which is true. I guess I don't want to like talk your head off or anything, but um the last thing that's on my heart right now is just, I guess, I feel a need to reboot it because of fans and people also being like, "Oh, well, you already have a fan base for this story, so you might as well."
Right.
But it's like I don't know if that's really the story on my heart right now either, and
Yeah.
so that's something that I've been struggling with.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's a decision, right? Decisions are hard. Like I mentioned in this call. I mean, that it's a taxing thing to try and make a decision like that. And of course, then there's going to be the sunk cost bias, where you've spent all this time, yeah, again, cultivating these fans, and you've already spent some time on this comic. So you're like feeling the pressure of maybe making that mistake, which is never a mistake, right? It's, as long as you're creating something, even if you changed your course down the line, you will have improved by going through those processes. You will have more under your belt. You'll probably cultivate even more fans that will latch on to almost anything else you create in the future, to be honest. So it's all worth doing, I would say. And I guess I can't necessarily advise you any one way or the other based on what you've told me already, but it just sounds like it sounds like one of the main reasons that you're even thinking of going one direction over the other is because you think that it's like the right thing to do for your fans, which is admirable. And of course, like it's really sweet of you to be thinking of your fans. But I would encourage you to remember that one top level dream like project should be just for you. Should be like whatever's, like you said, like on your heart the most. And if your heart's not going to be in, a project that you are pushing yourself to work on, I would say that the chances that you're going to abandon it are increased a lot more, right? If you're not loving it, you very well might quit it. So I would push you to do what you're feeling the most. And my guess is that you will be surprised by how the fans of one comic are really just fans of you and whatever you do. And like, if you're seeing another project as more cool, they probably are going to think the same thing.
mm, I like that. That was a really insightful answer. Thank you so much.
Cool. I'm glad that made sense. I'm curious to see everything that you're thinking. I'd love to talk to you more about it, but obviously, I want to make sure that we're talking about,
Yeah,
specifically these fears.
yeah. Well, I want to let you know I did reach out via Instagram to you
Okay.
about the mentorship. So
Cool.
if you ever want to pick my brain, I'm available around.
Nice.
So and yeah, if you ever want to see any more of my work or the comics I've done or anything, that's also there
Yeah,
too.
that would be fun. I think you've got a very specific, I guess, decision point and kind of like problem right now where like things are going to change a lot for you once you make a decision, no matter what that decision is. And I think it's going to be really
Yeah.
exciting to go through that process. So definitely looking forward to seeing what you choose and seeing where you go.
Thank you kindly. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for yeah, I have been offline for the past day pretty much because of my illness, but I will check into that.
No, no rush. No rush. It's all good.
Cool. Thank
All
you so
right.
much for
Well,
coming up.
thank you, and thank y'all for the support in the chat. I'm gonna catch up.
Yeah. Yeah, the chat talking about all these people pleasing now. It's a great topic, honestly, and I think we're going to talk a lot more about that on the day where we're talking about sharing with social media. So a lot of us have that
Mm.
tendency. All
Yeah,
right.
especially when it's instant gratification. It's tough.
Oh yeah.
It's tough.
It's hard to not look at those numbers and be like, well, this is what the people want. But it's all about putting our vision first, above the people, basically.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, K-Man.
No problem.
All right. Shall we go to Wolverito? Hey, how you doing? Oh, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're muted. It doesn't say you're muted. It just isn't making sound. If anyone else can hear, let me know though. I'm still not hearing anything. No audio. Check the microphone, like check what microphone it's connected to and yeah, you might leave and come back in, maybe see if that works. I am seeing that now you unmute and mute, but there's no audio coming through. I'm sorry. If you want, we can talk via text if we've tried everything, but I might try logging out and coming back in. Okay. Yeah, if it's I've definitely noticed a couple times like it's set to the default and I'm like, well, that should work, but what's the default? Sometimes it's totally random. All right, inviting Wolverito back in. Hope that it works. Not hearing anything yet. Nope. Sounds like nothing. Dang. I mean, it's worked previously. Well, let's talk during the chat then. I guess it's nice to see you, but you can also yeah, text type any of your questions if you can, or if you already have. Let me see. All right. Yeah, you can totally try some of these things, but for now, let's do the text for the questions. All right. He says, I just wanted to thank you for this challenge. And thanks to everyone for sharing. Well, that's awesome, Wilfredo. It's really been nice to have everyone together. I feel like this is such an amazing group. I think it's the best possible that I could have hoped for to get to know you guys. And um, I don't know, this is a really really great group, and we got really lucky with that because um, this has been it's been a blast, and I feel like we've also gotten a lot of really cool insights from a lot of you. Um, I'm really excited about starting to hand out prizes. I think tomorrow is the first day that I'm really gonna start talking about that because so many of you have just like blown me away. Made new art friends here. Yeah, that's the dream, right? That's what the community should be. All right, I'm gonna let you guys chat. The challenge is really well thought out and getting a lot out of it. That's awesome, Wilfredo. I'm really glad. This is the first time that I'm doing anything like this, and I just wanted to make a challenge that I kind of wish that I had been able to do or go through. And this is a lot of the stuff. Like I like the idea of and for future challenges, kind of blending the idea of bettering ourselves in various ways that I think are really important for creatives, like mental health awareness, like burnouts, routine, right? And confidence. Like these are things that I want to talk about, but I love the idea of us using our creativity and using our artistic skills to kind of drive that home and create something really beautiful while getting better at, the things that people don't really talk about enough in the art community. Okay, for now I'm gonna invite Anne up to speak, or on. You can let me know how to say your name.
Hello. Oh, can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yep, I can.
It's Anne. It's okay. Yes,
And
it's Anne.
okay.
First of all, hello.
Hi.
I think this is the first time I'm here. I'm also have some questions. It's similar to what Cayman said,
Mhm.
but it's about motivation.
Okay.
Um, well, for me, I sometimes I don't know why. I usually stop drawing for a lot of time. Hmm. For example, last month I was not drawing at all. And it was being like that for 2 months, maybe.
Okay.
Um, and at some point in my life, there was a time where I stopped drawing for almost 5 years. And it was very hard for me to find motivation. Um, I know it was related to the way I was feeling, because I usually try to find new kind of music or read new manga or whatever to find some motivation
Mhm.
to keep like drawing and being creative. But mm, I also hate the fact that I have to depend on external factors to be motivated.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of videos that speaks about this topic, like finding intrinsic motivation,
Yep.
and I just don't know how to achieve it.
Yep.
Um, I have two questions. Does this happen to you as well? And also, what can I do to stay motivated for longer periods of time?
Yeah. This is 100% something that I've experienced and have a lot of experience with. I used to feel so stuck with that. And I was like, I think I used to say I have no discipline. That was something that I struggled with a lot because the fact is I was very reliant on external motivation in order to get going. And I could get that, right. I mean, I got into the habit of, right, I would scroll through Pinterest when I was trying to find something, some kind of motivation to draw or like get inspired to draw. And if I didn't feel up for it or like if I wasn't finding anything, I would just give up because I had no ideas or I had nothing that I wanted to do. And the truth is, the motivation is, of course, you can rely on external motivation and just do it when it feels like when you feel inspired and motivated, but that means that the percentage of time that you're going to be drawing or feel like drawing is way less, right? And again, with all of these resistances, also you might even feel inspired maybe like 10% of the time, but that small amount of time you also have a lot of resistance come up because oh, it's outside your comfort zone now also because you haven't drawn for a long time, right? Maybe it's even more difficult to get back into it. So my advice for that, and what changed my life when I started like really internalizing, is you don't need motivation to start doing it. And I think that it was really hard for me to figure that out, and figure out that, I mean, and I think there's a lot of quotes on this about like motivation comes as you're doing something, or like the inspiration comes as you're doing something. You have to kind of get in the habit of starting before you feel motivated, starting on something and trusting that it's going to pick up. It's going to happen eventually. And that's the hardest thing in the world, especially when you are used to seeing creativity as something that you do when you're inspired to do it, because that's fun. You know, when I'm inspired to draw and I get the burst of inspiration and I have actually like gone with it, it's so fun and so rewarding, especially in contrast to the times when I don't feel like it and I force myself to sit down and like draw something. It doesn't feel fun at first, but to know that you can trust that going through those motions is eventually going to pick you back up and pick up the motivation, it really does change the game. Like there isn't a time that I can think of in the past 2 years after really like getting the handle of this that I have felt like, well, I'm just not motivated for it right now. Like it might be that like I don't even see my top level vision for a day. Like sometimes I've felt really down about myself. I've even yesterday, right? Because I was sick. I didn't really feel super great about like my vision. I wasn't like, oh, I wish I could work on my art. I was like, I can't think about anything right now. I have no motivation. I just need to like, I can't do it. That's why I really did have to like pushed yesterday's to today, because I knew like I just wasn't there. But I knew that it was going to come. Like I knew that I was going to come back to this place of being able to do this. Like I opened up my computer and forced myself to sit down with the presentation, with everything, and prepare myself. And now I'm sitting with you guys. I'm really, really passionate about this stuff. So the motivation's rolling in, right? And I think it's just about getting in the habit of sitting down and having faith almost that like the motivation is going to come, the inspiration is going to come through the act of starting on the project, of sketching, of like moving your hand on the paper, right? Moving your pencil on the paper. That's where it actually should come from, and not from external factors, right? It's all fun and games, of course, if you get motivated by somebody, you know, you can roll with that, but it cannot be something that you rely on at all. So does that make sense? Do you have any questions about that, or like how does that feel?
It makes sense.
Cool.
I think it was fine. Thank you very much.
And I know that's kind of hard. It can be hard to hear, like, just do it even though you don't feel like it. It's really about having faith that you will enjoy it. You will fall back in love with it, but it does take sitting down and, you know, drawing. And I would urge you to, again, keep it in your comfort zone, you know, keep it in that play area. Just do something that you've always enjoyed, that is easy for you, so that you can get the ball rolling in a fun way that is going to build motivation. So hopefully that makes sense and isn't a bummer of a statement, because I know, like I said, I lacked discipline, or I felt like I lacked discipline, because the real thing that I lacked was the faith that if I sat down and did something, I would enjoy it down the road. So yeah.
Yeah, me too. I lack a lot of discipline.
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to be presence, you know, when you're sitting down, be present to it. But yeah, totally relate.
Yeah, it's just that sometimes it feels that I cannot draw anything, as the graph said before.
Yes.
But when that comes, it's like I don't know what to do. Sometimes I'm thinking I should stop for a while, maybe doing something else, or whatever. But in the end, I just feel like I'm losing my time.
Yeah.
And instead of doing whatever I'm doing to like space out a bit, I'm just wasting time. So yeah, it's a bit hard.
And it's a bummer to feel like you're wasting time, but recognize that part of building that motivation is going to be through play, through the act of like drawing something that you have no pressure to draw, and nothing is ever a waste of time. Like it's either getting you to that place of loving art again, or it's challenge, right? It's teaching you something that you hadn't been doing before. But I would urge you to not do stuff that like you feel truly isn't doing either of those things, right? Like I kept on saying how there was a choice for me to not draw, too many different kinds of characters for a while. Like I wanted to stay in my comfort zone, and that's because I was dealing with a bunch of other different stressors, right? I don't necessarily need to create something that's going to be a challenge that isn't going to further any of my visions. I simply wanted to let myself play with my art, and that's a good place to be when you're not feeling like you're on a roll with art. If you're not feeling motivated, go back to play and just have fun with your art, and know that you're getting closer to that goal through building, falling in love again with your art. And it's not a waste of time. It is exactly the thing that is the next step. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. I'm glad that worked for you, and let me know how that goes. Because I mean, this workshop in general, I think I really wanted this to be something that could help people like get the ball rolling, especially if it had been a while for you in art, or like you just got back from vacation or whatever it is. Getting the ball rolling on art is sometimes about, like you said, like external motivation can like trigger that for you and remind you of how fun it really is to create. But at the end of the day, you got to be the one to sit down and be like, I know I loved this once. It's going to happen again. It's going to work, and just move the pencil on the paper. So I hope that works.
Yeah.
Keep me posted.
Hope you get well soon.
Oh yeah, thank you, and thank you for coming up.
No worries.
All right. Root Rage. Go ahead and come up.
All right, give me one quick
Hi.
second. Oh, hey. Yeah, I just had I guess, kind of a quick question. I'm doing, or I finished my, my alternate, my alter ego, or I guess maybe not finished. I'm still kind of working on it. My style is a little bit, I'll maybe share it. That might be useful, but
if you can.
My style is obviously pretty cartoony. It's still I'm still kind of trying to learn a little bit more of trying to figure out like what like my all my bases are from like I said, more kind of cartoony stuff. I'm trying to also learn still the tools of even digital art. I know a lot of people here have done digital art. I'm literally like a month into using Clip Studio on a tablet that I just got, getting back into it. So for me, part of this was trying to figure out like what the best way to portray some of the characteristics were on a character without making it feel like, I guess, over designed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's probably my biggest question is like how do you display those things, or what's like a good way to kind of do that without having to worry about over designing the character, because I'm adding little details, I'm doing that, and then I realized, okay, I spent way too much time doing all these little details that maybe is going to not look great at the end piece, and
Sure.
Yeah, spent a lot of time just working on this.
I mean, and yeah, I totally get the working on one area or like detailing like one thing too much is definitely a risk, I guess. I would ask you again, in the spirit of what today is all about, what would happen if you over designed it? Like, what's the fear there?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just like it's gonna look. It's funny because even doing the, hey, let's do a messy drawing, I did a couple, and then I was like, wow, that looks not right. But I'm trying to embrace that a little bit too. I think the idea of, over designing, that nothing would happen. Like at the end of the day, nothing would happen. So maybe spending more time and adding some of those details, or other things would be part of it as well. So, and I mean,
there may be an answer. There may be an answer to this, right? Like someone might say, if I over-designed the character, then people won't pay attention to the features that I want them to pay attention to in the character. or, you know, maybe it really is a time thing, right? Like maybe you're like, I really only have like 4 hours to spend on this, and I spent 3 of them on this small part. Like that won't do.
Right.
But get clear on what your real
And
reason is.
And that was the other part too, is you know, I think trying to make it be a representation of like it came up, funnily enough, my partner, she she was like, hey, you know, I was like, hey, I'm designing this character, I'm doing this. She's like, oh, I love, she's an artist, she loves doing character stuff like that.
Nice.
And I was like, I'm trying to design this character. I don't, you know, I was like, I always feel, you know, more connected with, you know, feminine presenting characters than male presenting ones. And she laughed and she was like, well, I think that's because you have somehow made yourself into becoming this, the secret was you watched all these movies and things growing up, but you became your own sort of idea of a manic pixie dream girl. And I was like, is that what my alternate identity is just like a hype, like a hyped up version of myself that is, you know, if not this, you know, I think there's negative connotations, but just a positive self-image of myself that's just like, oh, I'm, you know, kind of quirky, embracing that level of, you know, being kind of nerdy, geeky and stuff. So I guess the other aspect of it was figuring out, you know, if over designing was true to myself, which is, you know, those levels too of like trying to express, there's more that I want to express in it, but a level of figuring out what that would actually look like. So
yeah, definitely question that and see what your real answers are. Like, I mean, why does it worry you? And there may be real good reasons that you want to keep the character very simple, or it might actually, you might realize that what you think, again, is a flaw in your work might be something that other people will find really, really cool. Like, I mean, there's a lot of, I guess, I don't know, I don't remember the exact term of the aesthetic, but in Japan, like over-designed characters are super in, or at least they were like 10 years ago. I might be out of the loop now, but that's, it's totally cool there. And it's an aesthetic, and they can kind of like see that as like a more advanced character and not like an over-designed character. So do what's true to you. And if your gut is telling you, no, when I zoom out, I do feel like I spent too much time on that, then just know that that's the time. That's the reason, right? It's really about their time. So continue zooming out, you know, or like whatever you need to do, but get very clear on like why. And I make sure that reason isn't because someone told me that my characters were over designed one time. Like, you know, because that's definitely not going to.
Yeah.
But there may be a reason.
That makes sense. No, I was gonna say that definitely makes sense too, and that's also probably, again, I think there's a level of personal preference of sometimes where I'm like, ooh, I see that, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on here. I don't know where to look. Where
sure,
I think keeping it simple,
that can be a good reason.
Too simple.
Yeah. And like figure out what you want, the biggest characteristics to be. I guess that would be my advice. If you find that, you know, your reason is that you want to be able to direct the person viewing to the things that matter, like what are the most important traits of this character, like the most important, you know, traits that you want them to notice. Like, how do you make your visual characteristics of those things like a lot bigger or like a lot more noticeable, and maybe even just completely remove some of the other ones if they feel distracting to you. But I would urge you to you know, I don't feel, at least at this point, that the character is over designed, but maybe there's aspects that I'm missing.
No, I was gonna say, yeah.
It looks.
No, I was gonna say it feels. It feels very. I guess that's the level, right? Is I keep one. The thing is, I've changed it a lot from like even where I started to being like, you know, being like, okay, does this look good? Does this okay? Let's change.
You've already taken
shirt.
things
let's
out.
Change this. Yeah, let's add. Yeah, I've taken stuff out. I've been like, oh, let's add a bag. Let's add, you know, this graphic. Let's add, you know, and so it became more simplified, but I don't know if that loses, I guess, some of that personality and just kind of figuring that out. So
yeah, well, I mean, honestly, just even hearing about like the vision for it being kind of a manic pixie dream girl, I would say I would push you to push yourself a little bit over the line of what you think would be over designed, and just see how that feels. Like, you can use this community as a resource. Also, you can be like, you know, here's the original, here's the more complex version. Like, how does that read? Right. Like, you know, I'd love to see what that looks like to you, because it might be just something you made up in your head that like you're worried about this thing that like would actually make it really cool or really, quirky,
Better.
like, which is exactly the
No, and
point.
I think the vibe. No, I agree completely. And yeah, the community has been great already. They even for the outfit stuff, I had posted a bunch of
Oh,
like kind of
nice.
progress ones from. It started. I'm not great at hands and feet yet. Like I said, I'm just getting back into art. So it's like, oh, long sleeves, and
You've,
the first iteration had
yeah,
boxing gloves, and it's like,
you've done
okay,
it.
let's figure it out. So yeah, so now it's figuring that out. So um, it's yeah, now it's part of the aesthetic. So yeah, they directed me to some places on Pinterest and stuff that were good, which
Nice.
changed the outfit and did some of that. So um, okay, cool. No,
Very,
I
very
really
proud of this
appreciate that.
community.
Yeah, I know the community. No, community is great. Everyone here has been super, super awesome,
Yeah,
and I really appreciate that. So, awesome. Thank you so
very
much, Marco.
cool. I'm excited to see some of your over designing. I have to catch up with the
Yes, I was
chat
gonna
a
say
bit.
yes. No worries. I'm happy to mess around with it a little bit more, but I want to at least get something ready for today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it looks great. It's fun to hear some of that vision that's behind it. So, yeah, I would say just constantly question these things and make sure that they're not just made up things that you're echoing in your head because someone said it and it's actually important to you. And why is it important to you? Like I love minimal character design also, but it's something that I have to question. Like, am I doing this because I was told that I need to do it? And for me it's usually other things, right? I talk about the
I
same face syndrome, and like if I drew a different type of face, it would not be because I want to do it. It would be because everyone's telling me I have same face syndrome, which is not the reason to do something usually.
No, that yeah, that makes sense. And I'm one of those where, like I said, my girlfriend's an artist, and she'll send me pictures or characters and stuff on like Toy House or something, and
Oh
she'll be like,
yeah,
"Oh, don't you like this character?" I'm like, it's very over designed in my
it's a
opinion. And she's
different.
like, "You like too simple of characters," so I'm trying. I guess yeah, embracing
Yeah,
the comfort on the outside of that, I think would be good.
yeah, it's a
Okay,
personal thing.
awesome.
Do what's right for you for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you for
I
coming up.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yep.
All right, Daxrel, did you come up? All right, Daxrel, it looks like you're muted, but um, there you go. I can. It looks like it's working now, but I can still not hear you. Very strange. Daxter, I'm still not hearing any speech, but I see that the mic is working. It just seems like it's not working. Oh well. Is anyone else hearing Daxter speaking? Okay. Sounds like something's up with the mic. But Daxter, if you can text, I think you are typing. I'm not sure anymore. Yeah, same over. I can see that the mic works, but I don't hear anything. All right, so Daxter, go ahead and type into the chat what any questions you have. We've got. I guess we're almost crossing the 2 hours threshold soon, so I may try to end this around 5 p.m. for me, which is at the end of the hour. For now, I guess Daxtrel, since I'll wait for you to type your question. But okay, that's all. I'm a vendor for a lot of markets. I was wondering if you've ever done any markets to sell your art. There's a pressure when I get when creating, like you've mentioned earlier, but I feel like there's an extra layer to anxiety when creating something specifically for selling. Do you have any ideas to overcome that specific thing? So I haven't done specifically markets yet, but a big part of my business plan just like to make income as an artist is selling products. So I have a lot of experience with analyzing product development. And that's also what I used to do for a living, like for other companies. So I have a lot of experience with like thinking about this stuff. And I myself was really plagued by this for a while, because as anyone who's like in e-commerce or in commerce in general, when you're analyzing a product for sale, a big part of that is getting user feedback. And so I was stuck in that for a while. I was like, that's not fun for me. That idea of like creating stuff just for other people, it takes a lot of the creativity and the fun out for me personally, because when I have an idea of something that I want to create, I kind of want to create it for me almost, you know? And that tends to be like what is inspiring to me, and what is fun for me is trying to create it to my specifications. And so finding that balance of being an artist, which a true artist, right? If you're, I mean, imagine like a painter, right? Who's painting something to sell for sale that's like, I don't know, $10,000. Like that process of them creating something and then putting that up for sale for like a lot of money. It's not really about getting user feedback and seeing if there's a market for it or like anything like that. It's the best artwork is made when they're not doing any of that, when it's truly pure self-expression. And so there has to be a really good balance of creating for yourself as an artist and creating something that like other people want. And I find myself a lot more leaning on the artist avenue, where I want to make sure that the products are things that I like, that I would wear, or that, yeah, I make a lot of, now I'm very focused on clothing. But even this art book thing that I just came out with, that was something that I personally didn't understand the need for. But when people kept asking me if I had an art book, I realized that like that would be something that I could make and really get involved in. And I feel like there's already a proven market for it. So personally, that was a project where I took the initiative and was like, okay, I know that people want this thing, so I'm going to create it. But what I did not do is try to get user feedback as I was making it. And I really wanted to make sure that it was a creative expression that was straight from me, and that I was really happy with the results. Like I wouldn't really be happy with it if I just went with an idea of something that like I felt like everyone expected or wanted. So there really just have to be a good balance for that. And I would say if you're feeling pressure, like, and what I think is really not fun is you being like, I know that people want this, but I hate making them, but I have a pressure that I need to make it because it's going to sell. I feel like that is a sign. That's a bad sign. Like that's, in my mind, that's something where you want to take a step back and really evaluate like what would you want to create? And there may be a market for one of the things that you actually want to create. So very curious what exactly you feel when you say that there's a pressure, or like if you feel like it's something that people are begging for and you need to make it. As an example, I mean, there's a lot of things that people have asked me about that I have an aversion to creating, and I will not create them. And I feel like there's a couple things, I guess, like things like having my work on mugs, or having my work on like a mouse pad. Like a lot of people have asked me for that, but it's not a product that I myself like would partake in. I'm just not not one to buy like art mouse pads or anything. So for me, that feels very off-brand. It feels not right in my heart to like make something that I myself wouldn't use. I want to stick to like creating and spending my time creating stuff that I myself would use. So that's one of the reasons that I just don't delve there. And obviously when it's your job, when your job is, going to a lot of markets, and you really want to make sure you have a plethora of stuff that people are going to grab. I can totally understand that there's a pressure just financially to make sure that it's going to sell. But at the end of the day, sometimes you have to take a step back, and even if that meant, making a little bit less at a market while you're kind of building up the brand, making sure that it's in the direction that you want your products to go, that in my mind would still be worth it to make sure that you are creating something that's true to yourself. So I hope that makes sense. If you can let me know, like, what you think about that, or like if it's a different pressure that you're feeling, or if there's something else there that I haven't really gone over, let me know. Really hit the nail on the head. Perfect. Okay, cool. And again, I haven't really gone to markets. This would be a new thing for me. I really would love to do that sometime. But so far I haven't, and mostly that has come down to me not really having a huge product offering yet. I at any given time I'm usually selling like 1 to 5 items. But as I kind of build that up, I'm looking forward to like delving into that. Maybe I'll hit you up and ask you for advice on that, because it would be a very new thing for me. I've only gone to one other comic convention actually in my life, so that's an area that I haven't even delved into. But very exciting. Okay, if we're good on that, let's move on to the next person, I guess. If that's okay. Thank you so much for coming up and asking that, Daxrel. Sorry that the mic wasn't working. I'm not sure what the deal was with that. Yeah, Discord's been weird on me. For my PC, which you can see back there, if I don't know if anyone can. I pretty much just use that for gaming, but Discord hates it. It's like really finicky. Some days I just can't hear anything, and I don't really know why. And I don't know when my PC started acting worse with Discord than my Mac. I have no idea. It seems really backwards, but that's the case. All right. Hallie Chu, come on up. And it is past 5, so if anyone needs to leave, I totally understand. I'm amazed that we've all stayed here this long, but I do want to make sure I answer any questions. Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Good. Sorry, this is my twin sister. I get really anxious talking, because I work remote, so I'm never around actual people.
Yep. Me too.
So yeah, I was the one who posted this little character sheet.
Yeah.
Let's think. I struggle with colors a lot. I know I posted that earlier. I don't know how to choose colors, because I don't know if you can see like over here. I was trying, like, I don't know if there's a better way traditionally. Like, I hate having to pull out my iPad. I took a picture of it, did the line art, and, like, did the coloring on the iPad and stuff. And it's frustrating. I always have to, like, have my iPad around to do color stuff. And I didn't know if there's a better way to do that traditionally, especially with the mediums. Like, I just got these Art X acrylic paint markers. And obviously they're a little limited if you don't have all of them. And it's
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so I love that idea. I don't think I've done that, and I'm now like, maybe I will try doing this from now on, because like it just seems like a really good tip to just take it into the iPad and try out colors. I feel like we never want a crutch, right? I think that's the real thing. I think that's a cool tool idea, but if you're using it as a crutch and not trying out colors, in like the experimental way that like truly traditional is great at, then you might feel like you said, like, I need to bring my iPad everywhere with me, otherwise I just can't move on to this next step. And that's I think where the trouble comes in. So I would say, what would happen if you tried out colors traditionally and then you didn't like it? Like, what would be bad about that, or like what would happen that would be negative?
Well, I feel like I've done that before, and I completely ruined the drawing, so it was like really dark and then you couldn't see the line art. But I also have this thing where I want to stop always doing black line art. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to do like a darker colored line art. And
I think that's gorgeous.
I feel like, yeah, I just feel like if I choose a really dark color, it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can totally understand that. I mean, would you be able to, I mean, if you went forward onto the sketch and you ruined it, would you be able to start again and try that again?
Like redo the sketch?
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally just asking, like, would you feel comfortable with doing that, or would you just feel like, well, that was a waste, that's trash now?
Yeah, I would feel like it's trash, because I would feel like I'm not going to be able to reproduce it the way I did. I mean, yeah, it could be better, but what if I keep getting worse and worse and worse, and then I get mad because I can't draw her the way that I did.
Yeah.
Like I was so angry because her face right there, I had drawn her the same way in that picture, and I was like, well, great. She's literally just blown up, nothing different about it because of whole face, like the same face syndrome or whatever it's called.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, let's make her squinting and make her smiling and like pushing up her glasses because I'm constantly doing that. So when I went to go color it, I completely forgot I did that. So then I started coloring her eyes there again. I was like, oh my God. So it took so much paint marker layers to erase her eyes and that. And I don't know if you would have seen like the meltdown that I had, it was really bad.
Yeah, and I can relate to almost all those things, and trying to push yourself in little ways like that. Like, I think it sounds like an appropriate amount of challenge that you were doing, but always remember that, what's wrong with just making a little blown up version of her face? Like, it has to be just something that you want to change, right? And make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself, pushing yourself too hard, or obviously like if it's feeling stressful and not fun, something's amiss there, and you got to take a breather and be like, why do I feel like this needs to be perfect here? Some people kind of mentioned like it's definitely very possible, and a lot of people do this, where you make a copy of your sketch or use tracing paper to trace over the sketch so that you have that saved. If you do like mess it up, quote unquote, that you could kind of like start again, or just practice the colors directly on that tracing paper sketch. So there's a lot of different ways that you could kind of simulate, I guess, what you're doing with the iPad, if bringing the iPad places is the issue here. But I would urge you to, although I always understand that you don't want to feel like you have a crutch there, that you need to draw it. I want you to feel like you can draw no matter what, right? I mean, if you were in the middle of a field with just your sketchbook, I would hope that you would be able to just create. But part of that is going to be about letting go of feeling like it needs to be perfect, that like you need to know that these colors are going to work really well before you start out, because beautiful mistakes happen through going through that process and being like, maybe, oh no, like the color, it doesn't look as good with this, but maybe it looks better in a certain way, or maybe it pushes you to try out different ways to cover that up. Or like for my ink drawings, I'm really upset about like not being able to use undo, or like a lot of my ink work on digital is very dependent on my ability to carve out with the eraser tool whenever I make a mistake, or even just to like make the line thinner. And not being able to do that was a huge crutch, but it also pushed me to learn ways that I could cover up mistakes, with white acrylic paint or like whatever it is. So I would push you to try other ways to like make that work traditionally, if that works for you. But also don't be ashamed to use the iPad as a crutch. I think that's a really cool idea as like a way to use that tool. And just know that if you're not using it, if you're not with your iPad, that you get to explore ways to like make that work without it, right? And there's a bunch of different things you could do here. A lot of people put that in the chat, so there's some things you could try for sure.
Yeah, well, I didn't even think about the whole tracing thing, so that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
Cause I know I've seen some artists like do that, and then like they'll, like in their art spreads, they'll actually like tape or glue that other version on top. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
They're like, this one worked, so here it is.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, the sky's the limit, right? It's all about what works for you. So I understand though, like if you don't want to have that with you anymore, push yourself and challenge yourself outside that comfort zone and try some new stuff. I love the tracing paper idea though. I think that's cool. And I just started using alcohol markers like this year.
Yes.
And I'm like, I actually do not own a skin colored marker. So I've had to get very creative with how I solve that problem.
Yeah, I know. I did like a Copic marker spread the other day, and it was petrifying because the color. I have my color swatch sheet, but you
Very
don't know how
important.
they're gonna like layer on top of each other and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Even on different paper, I was noticing. I mean, I never knew all of the pains that come along with using these markers. You really need the
Yeah.
swatch sheet, and you need to try it on each new paper that you have. It's a lot of work, but yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Sorry.
Well, I think
My nephews are in the background.
no worries. Hi. But yeah, I think that was a really good question, and your image honestly looks amazing at this point. So I know that it's really stressful sometimes, but the stuff that you
Thank
can
you.
create is really amazing.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Let's move on, and I'll just take the one more person that's got their hand raised, Abby, if that's okay.
Do I have to leave?
I
don't know.
think so. I don't know if I can. I'm scared to push I'm not sure which thing I say to have someone leave.
Just turn.
All right,
Okay, it sounds like she figured it out.
go for it, Abby.
Okay, hold on, I have to share my screen. Okay, so I kind of found an answer for what I was going for.
Nice.
My question was, how can I represent a love for art? And I was thinking, paint splatters. I'm actually really bad at painting, physically. I can't figure out the paintbrush, but I thought that, the colors, paint splatters, a paintbrush would be a good way to do it. And so I have I just threw up a hand with a paintbrush. But I was just wondering, how else can I represent love for art?
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, your thoughts about paint splashes and a paintbrush. It's interesting because that's in contrast, right, to your actual experience of what art is to you, right? Because you don't paint. So, I mean, I would maybe question you to think about, what does that actually look like for you? What's in front of you when you're creating, right? What do you use to create?
I normally use digital. I think it's just convenient. I always have the iPad for school and stuff.
Sure. And what tools? I guess what app do you use, or what?
Procreate.
Okay, on the iPad, I guess. I would assume. I don't know if it's on anything else still, but I know originally it was just iPad.
It's just the iPad.
Okay. Yeah, so I would kind of push you to maybe try out. Maybe you already have done this, but you give the character the actual tools that you really do use. For me, also, there's a lot that goes into creating art that maybe one wouldn't think of when you're thinking about tools. I need to have kind of a mood board of where the direction that I'm taking something a lot of the time. So that's a big part of art for me, and that might actually be a big an idea for you, or if you use a weird tool that you wouldn't really think about, if you were literally sitting down right now to create, what's literally in front of you, right? Your laptop, your stylus, the thing that holds your iPad up, I don't know, weird tools, and maybe brainstorm drawing those out, because then it'll kind of make a more significant connection to what you're actually doing with art. But another idea that I might go with is thoughts. What does the art actually mean to you? What would you be thinking about? What would you be visualizing? For me, that's a really big part of my art. I'm thinking about that vision in my head. So that would be something that just came to mind. That might not be the case for you though, and I would say go with what feels very significantly art to you. But it's just funny to see you thinking about paint so much when that's not even really what you do. Did that give you any ideas or anything like that?
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that was a lot of good stuff. Thank you.
Nice. Okay, I'm glad. This looks really, really cool. I'm excited to see that move forward. The holding a tool in the hand is a really cool idea. I'm just I'm wondering how I can push you to make it a tool or something that feels significantly, that means art to you, or means or symbolizes, is that a word? Symbolizes
So,
what
symbolizes. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
symbolizes what art really is to you and what your experience of creating art is, because it'll be more meaningful and personal if you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. I'm excited to see what you come up with at this point. I mean,
Okay,
don't
thank you.
necessarily
That was
just
awesome.
don't just go with what I'm saying. Obviously, like, you might come up with something else from that, but very cool.
All right, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we are good. Hope you guys have a good evening or morning or wherever you guys are at. I know the time zones are very vast for us. I think that this was really good. Keep in mind to always be questioning. Like, that's what the homework really is for this day. Like, have whenever you're having any resistance, whenever you're noticing like almost an art block feeling of like, I don't want to do this, ask yourself why, and ask yourself what it would look like if you totally messed it up. If you messed up the thing that you are afraid of trying, what would be the outcomes of that? And notice that like the fears that we have are not going to result in anything significantly bad for us. But I'm eager to see kind of like talk to you guys later when we start working on our final project a lot more seriously. That'll be when these things come up, and I want you to ask this question every time. And you can report back to the channel if they feel significant, if you want any guidance on them, or you can keep them for yourself and just let that help you work through it. All right. I am going to say bye. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a really big one, and I'm really, really excited about moving forward on our final projects. So I can't wait to talk to you guys tomorrow. All right. See you guys later. Bye. Game Boy, I'm noticing you're saying wait. Is that for me? I'm like scared to disconnect now. Okay. Did you want to ask one thing, or I can also answer it in the channel? I'll stay another minute just to make sure that's good. All right. Game Boy asks, do you recommend PureRef, the app? Because I want to have this app where you can download a picture to use as reference. PureRef is great. I think I use like Figma. There's a couple other apps that are like that. I highly recommend using something like that, though, where you can move stuff around on a board, where you can add text, add something else, add whatever you need for those mood boards, rather than something like Pinterest, where it's just images, and that's very, very dependent on, Pinterest removes pins all the time, or, they change, or you can only see like 6 at a time or whatever it is. So I highly recommend an app like that. PureRef is great. I used to use that. I don't so much anymore. But having it on your desktop or having it on your computer means that no matter what happens, they're going to be there, right? Like you're going to have that reference. Whereas again, Pinterest and some of those other tools get images removed all the time, and they're just gone to you, right? But yeah, highly recommend that. All right. I'm going to sign off. And I'll try to add some of these tools also, specifically for mood board making. PureRef is definitely a good one. I'm trying to remember what the other one was. I think Ergo Josh uses it, and I really liked the look of that one. You could add like GIFs and stuff, and I'm very excited about like trying that out. So, all right, I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.